Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Working Ant. With you is yours truly, your host and coach, Rami Balut. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're in great spirits. What can I say? I'm in a great mood because of the weather. I'm in the great mood because of the weather we've been having lately. It's been absolutely lovely outside. I just feel inspired to get outside, and I feel like it's been so long since we've actually had this experience here in the Bay Area. So if you're in California, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and if you're not, that's okay. All I will say is I hope you are able to do some of your favorite things and make space for that. Obviously, everything has a time and place, but I really do hope you are making space for yourself. As we are striving to do better for ourselves, as we are striving to be better individuals, as we are aspiring for more in our lives, and as we are really struggling at times to get where we want to be, it's exceptionally important to ensure that you are taking care of yourself, making just some level of space between you and the rest of the world where you can connect back with yourself. You can understand that, hey, you know what? With all these pressures, with all this information coming at me, with all these demands from people, these timelines and milestones to actually meet, I am still able to create some space where I can connect and just be me, think about things that I enjoy, write about things that I aspire towards. And isn't that a wonderful, wonderful thing to do for yourself? Today, we're going to be talking about, a lot of concepts around competition and strategies on how to navigate an increasing amount of competition in the workplace. This is actually in addition to those of us that are seeking out a new career transition, reinventing ourselves perhaps, that are finding increased competitions in the form of like interviews and applications and standing out by personalizing, quantifying contributions, really creating compelling cases for ourselves in our candidacy and our pursuits for a career transition. Separate but equal from that, I will say, is the amount of stress that one can actually come to experience when companies retract, budgets diminish, people are trying to say the smartest thing in the room, people are being louder and more passionate than others, and some people who are trying to be convincing just end up confusing. I think you know where I'm going with this, and I don't want to call it for what it is other than the reality in what we are living in. And you know what? Week after week, I want you to better navigate that reality, to be a better person for it, and to be better off because of it. And what a beautiful thing that is to do. And so, let's talk about that for a moment. This increased level of competition in the workplace. And I hear you and I feel you. When so many of us have experienced retractions in our industries, we find ourselves with teams perhaps having the same level of scope and are expected to deliver and produce the same level of impact, and very, very little sort of wiggle room to do otherwise. And so what do we do in situations like this, especially when we are trying to progress in our careers? If you look at a lot of organizations today, a lot of industries, they're trying to just operationalize a lot of the work that they're actually doing. And why wouldn't they? Operationalization, at least, it sort of levels out some of costs. It sort of gets people past this macroeconomic climate where, hey, you know what? We're not going to invest a lot in any new R&D. We're not going to invest a lot in any new innovations or invest in a lot of companies or people and teams. We're actually just going to, focus on a lot of our run of business activities, keeping the ship afloat, increasing our operational cash flow, just making sure that we can get through this time. And if you've seen, a lot of people's portfolios these days on the financial side of things, well, that's a whole different story altogether. All this is to say is that I get it. And on a personal note, being in a workplace where there is so much competition out there, for someone to stand out, for someone to, again, showcase their capabilities, showcase, how technically sound they may be in a certain subject, how immersed they may be into another, especially these days, when we're talking about generative AI and all these like language models and, all this machine learning, computer vision processes, and all these little algorithms that are coming into play that are overwhelming an industry that is trying to really just find itself. And whatever industry you're in and whatever it is that you're doing today, you may relate to this primarily just because like, hey, you know what? I'm experiencing a lot of like competition in the workplace. Some of us may be very, very well aware of it. And some of us may feel like, hey, you know what? I don't see any of this stuff coming, but I'll just say this, silently, there are those that are competing for space. And you know what? It may feel like it's the natural thing to do to just put that level of pressure back. Some of us can do that, and some of us can do it very naturally. Others cannot. And we find ourselves like, hey, you know what? We're well-intentioned individuals. We're working hard. We're doing everything we can to do right by our organization, to do right by the company, to do right by our teams. But we are actually failing to do, in many ways, right by ourselves, not deliberately, not intentionally, just because we actually are just sometimes oblivious or unaware of these circumstances that we're actually in. And so when we have a strong level of competition, when we feel compelled to speak, and I think you here can recognize it for yourself, if you feel that you're in a room where you are compelled to speak simply because you haven't really had any airtime, chances are you're feeling something in the sort of realm of a competitive environment that may or may not be available, like just completely in front of you at the forefront, and just, hey, you know what, this is a competition. I've got to like make sure that I've got my say in all this. And in fact, it's just a naturally free-flowing conversation where you're like, okay, all right, I don't really need to participate here, but I feel like I should. I feel like I should be saying something. I should probably do something about it, and I'm not. And what ends up happening is we may say things in a field of competition that won't necessarily land. Why? Because there are others, and so many of others, playing in that same sphere. So if it's about being the loudest person in the room, where you just go higher and higher and higher, well, then you probably know where to go there. Obviously, I wish no one to be in a room like that. If it's a room of like ideas and innovation, like, hey, what do we do when we operationalize, when we really don't have so much innovation going on? How do we showcase our craftsmanship? How do we actually showcase our value and the output and outcomes we put in to the work every single day when we show up? And we've got to have something to say for it. Oh my gosh, we're not going to be able to meet our objectives. We've got to have something to say for that. Oh my gosh, like they're paying us to keep the ship afloat, but they're also paying us to do better, to increase the efficiencies of something, to save costs on something else. All the while, we're trying to find our place in all of this. And a lot of people are competing for space. When things get decentralized, when things actually get pulled from other people's portfolios, what ends up happening is there are fewer and fewer projects to latch onto, especially fewer projects that actually have a larger scope and a larger impact. And many people you'll find, like, especially around like these times, really just scrambling to either anchor off of, piggyback of, someone or some program or something that actually is going to guarantee them something like a quantifiable output that they can later talk through in their performance evaluations. Or, for example, something where it actually reinforces the significance they're trying to have in their workplace. And this could be, anything like someone's title. It could be anything like someone's compensation. Of course, you don't need to be in a particular position to feel like you actually have authority. Many people are in positions where they feel like, hey, they don't have authority unless they actually had a portfolio that is commensurate with that authority. And so you'll find that trickling down into other people's teams and how they actually interact and react to news, to information. You'll see a lot of people striving today, more so than ever, to have direct access. I'm talking about accessibility here to information they otherwise would never, ever, during normal circumstances pursue, had it not been for the situation that we're in today, where it's like, I got to get something that is meaningful here, because if I don't, well, I have no idea what's going to happen in the future. And so, my alternative here today is very, very much built around context. If you've known me long enough, you'll know that, when people are competing in a certain direction, in a certain field, with a certain persona in mind, with a certain outcome of what it's going to take to stand out, what I would want you to do and always consider is going in an opposite direction. Change the mound completely. If they're expecting you to hit the right field, you aim for left. If they're expecting you to throw right-handed, well, all of a sudden, boom, you're ambidextrous and you can throw with your left as well. Play in a different league by playing in a different field, by aiming towards a different direction. And how do we do that? How do we do that in a room filled with extremely intelligent people, very loud voices, very strong convictions, people that want to do one thing in one way and have an opinion on this. And if you're not with them, then you're against them. And if you're not something smart to say, well, then, my gosh, well, where do you fall into this? And you don't want to compete there, because if you do, well, then you're just doing what everyone else does and your voice is drowned out. Very, very much so. And that's not what I want for you whatsoever. And so what do we mean here in this particular case when it comes to competition? What can we do strategically to play in a different field? And what I have seen work time and again here, and this is an alternative as always for you to consider, is play dumb. Play dumb. Leverage a lot of your inner stupidity, if I may say. And I know you might be thinking what the hell, where the hell did that come from Rami? But we all have a level of inner stupidity and dumbness within us. We can call it clumsiness. We can call it, something else. But there is an active, even if it's suppressed, inner stupidity within us. And this is not about being the dumbest person in the room per se, although, there are strategies around doing that. But here, when I talk about your inner stupidity or inner dumbness here, I feel like it's more around the questions that you're actually asking. Why are we doing this again? What is this all for? What are the alternatives we would have considered had we not chosen to do this? What would happen if we didn't do this? Who is it that's sponsoring this again? Who's our customer again? Is it a particular segment of customers? Is it our customer's customer? Who are our partners here? What is this going to mean when this is successful? If it is successful, what's going to happen then? These sorts of questions are harder and harder to actually pose. And they're harder to pose these days, primarily because the competition of which we're living in. And so when you're in a competitive environment and you're in a room with people, again, that have very strong opinions and very, very strong voices, typically you're like, you know what? I don't want drama. I don't need this. I can just take a direction and run with it and ensure the other person feels that they've been empowered to know that, yep, I agree. And yep, that's the direction we're going. And you know what? You're the boss anyways. You dictate. You take responsibility. Even though I'll take the accountability, you'll take the responsibility. And I'll just run with it that way and we'll call it a day and another day in paradise. And here we are again, doing it again the next day. And we lose so much of ourselves in the process doing so. We lose so much of our identity when we do so. We lose our personalities in many ways by doing so. When we have the opportunity to question and we don't use our tongue and our brilliant minds to ask it, well, we're losing out on so much opportunity for ourselves. And this is not just for our team's health, not just for our organizational's health, not just for our company's health, it's for our own personal benefit, our own personal gain. And at times it's just summoning the inner stupid in me and just saying, look, I'm just going to ask a question that may or may not sound completely ridiculous. Of course, you're saying this to yourself, right? We're not going to say this out loud, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Why are we doing this? What's this for? Remind me how we reached this conclusion. I'm sorry, can you walk me through the steps we took to define the actual problem? Did we consider alternatives? I'm sorry, how are we measuring success of this? And if we are in fact successful, what does that mean Who is this all for? If we actually are successful, what is that going to mean again? If we fail here, what's the alternative? What's our fallback plan? What's our as is today? Can someone remind me? And why is that so painful? I just want to make sure I'm clear here. These questions that we may be asking may appear as if they're absolutely ridiculous, but it's the perception that we have imposed on ourselves that is disallowing us to ask these basic, fundamental questions that are so strategic in nature. And if we're talking about competition here, we're aiming towards a different field. We're aiming towards a different direction. And by doing so, we are operating in a completely different league, a league of our own here. Yes, a league of our own here when it comes to how it is we present ourselves and the value that we are creating. And it could simply just come, sillily just come. Is that even a word? Stupidly just come. Is that even a word? Just from these questions, really. And these are exceptionally important questions to pose when we are running on all cylinders, trying to figure out, hey, what is the next best thing we can do to add productivity, to add value, to add margin, to add business, to add sales, to identify new channels of revenue, to identify a new customer base. All of these things, right, come from some basic fundamental questions. And you know what? What these questions are really doing is, they're providing context. They're providing context over the why. Why are we doing all these things? So just to give everyone a level of context, and actually context, when conducted correctly, actually provides a level of calm. If I know what I'm doing, and I know why we're doing it, and I know that we have looked at all the alternatives here and still decided to go in this direction, and we actually clarified from the very, very beginning this is indeed a problem worthy of solving, then we'll get a level of calm, knowing that we are doing things for the right reasons. And when we actually feel that level of calm through the context of what it is that we've been asking, what does that produce? That produces a level of clarity. So all of a sudden, I'm asking questions. These questions are producing a level of context. This context is providing a level of calm, like, I get it. Okay, I see. Clarity. We're getting clarity from that. And that, here we go, my last C, I promise here, produces confidence. And that's primarily what I want for you, because when you're in a room and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I've got to say something for the sake of saying something. Well, it's like, okay, I got to activate my inner conviction. I got to activate my inner confidence. And then when we do that, then we're actually like, being very, very inauthentic with ourselves. We're not being genuine in that case. And if we're not being genuine in that case, then it's like, what are we really going to say here that's going to land? Maybe it does land, but do we actually feel it's landed? Is that really indicative of the value that we actually bring? Is that really representative of us? And, my response to you is, if you don't follow a process of context, then you're really going to find yourself in a place where, oh my gosh, I have no idea what's going on, but I guess I'm in for this ride. I'm going to compete in that direction. And that can go on for a certain period of time. But when it comes down to like a performance evaluation or your own career growth or an interview, it's not going to sound as compelling, is it, when it's inauthentic to you? And, I think the real way of succeeding in this short professional life we're actually given is really, really being able to stay authentic to yourself. And we talked about this before, which is like, imagine you removing this level of stress that comes with impressing people, pleasing people. And this is just precisely doing just that. So it's almost like if, we're in these meetings and we're trying to figure things out and try to aim for particular directions by asking these context bringing, clarifying questions, right? What we're actually doing is we are becoming the smartest person in the room. That's precisely what we're actually doing. And if it's a competition that we're after, which is eventually like really what we're in many ways, well then why not be a part of that league instead of the one who is, trying to be in a crowd and being the loudest person and trying to hold their hand up high and say like, hey, me, listen to me. I've got something smart to say. And it's not to say that you don't. And it's not to say that you won't, but do you really want to be commenting for the sake of commenting? Do you really want to be saying something for the sake of saying something? Or do you really actually want to add true value to the work that you do? And do you really want to showcase how strong your skill sets truly are? I think asking really good, simplifying, silly, stupid, whatever you want to call them, questions. Again, by the way, that's just the perception that we've yielded out for ourselves. If we're able to ask questions like that, my oh my, is that actually a game changer? And I think this here truly elevates us in the eyes of ourselves, first and foremost, for being intentional and deliberate, being true. But it also actually permeates across the team and the organization, knowing that, hey, you know what? If you want to get to a leadership position or influence without the authority you currently have, at minimum, you're producing clarity. Clarity through context of these questions, which gives a level of calm to everybody here, right? Because there's so much going on, right? And that level of calmness, that level of clarity, that level of understanding through context building measures, that gives a renewed sense of confidence. Hey, you know what? I don't need to say something smart. I can ask something smart. I can reassure people why we're headed in this direction. And through those gaps, by the way, when we get those responses through those questions we're asking, through those gaps, that's where we can find authentic value. That's where you can find a genuine place to contribute. It's through those gaps when we're asking questions like that. And this is sort of where doors open. And then we inject ourselves to a place where we actually want to be. That's aligned to us. That's aligned to our aspirations. That's aligned to our capabilities. That's aligned to all of these, let's just call it for what it is. All of these confidence building measures we wish we once had for ourselves, but we now can produce on our own, right? And so the reliance on ourselves for things like this. And I think it's an absolutely beautiful thing. So the next time, you're in a room where there is excessive amounts of competition, don't fall into that trap where you're like, oh my God, I got to say something smart now. Oh my God, I got to comment in the chat and say something smart too. Oh my gosh, what am I going to say right now? Because I'm in a position where I'm being paid to add value and I'm feeling drowned out and I feel like I want to add something, but I don't know what to say. And all these really, really smart, crazy voices are out there. How am I going to compete against that? Well, you don't compete against that. That's your response to that. You compete in a different league on your own by going back to the fundamentals, the basics, being brave enough to ask questions like that. Even if you yourself may think they're stupid and silly, guess what? The fact that so many other people will struggle to respond to questions like that will just show how smart you are. And you are smart, and I believe in you, and I believe in that. We're going to get through all of this. It's going to take some time, of course, but this is a really, really great time to invest in yourself. It's a really, really great time to be, reflective, have a strong amount of introspection and renew this level of self-efficacy you have for yourself, for your life, for your career. And it's a beautiful, noble pursuit to do so. We spend so much of our times doing what we're doing. I want you to be happy. You deserve that level of happiness. But, sometimes it just takes someone like yours truly, a good book, a good movie, a good song, even to open up your eyes, open up your ears, some of the things that you may not see. And perhaps by looking at things differently now, by seeing things for what they are, you actually can start doing what? Seeing things better than what they are. And you've got some tools in your arsenal with a personality like yours, with the craft that you bring, the value that you already add. You're able to amplify that and you'll get closer to achieving your goals. And with that said, it's just absolutely wonderful being with you all. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you investing your time with me. Please add me to LinkedIn if you haven't done so already. Send me an email, hello@ramibaloot.com, with some suggestions if you'd like a topic for another episode of The Working Ant, or schedule a real talk with me, consultation, or just say something to say hello and how you felt about a time like this with one another. I love hearing from you. Know that your voice matters. It matters to me. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week. Wherever you are in the world, please stay safe. Take care of yourself and of each other. And I will see you next week here on The Working Ant. Bye for now.